My mustache this morning.
It's very good. I've just started the recording as well, Dutch.
Oh, okay. Well, you can start with that. How's my mustache this morning?
Glorious as ever. Glorious as ever, Dutch. Hello, everybody. It's James here. Storytime with Dutch, episode 35. We're doing plugs first, podcast, if you can give us 5 stars on the podcast, iTunes, that kind of thing. We've got books to sell as well. Of course, I've got 2. The Rock, the People's Champion, written by me. Owen, Hart, King of Pranks, written by me. And Dutch, you've got 2 as well.
I have 2, Tales from a Dirt Road by me, by Dirty Dutch Mantell, and The World According to Dutch. And what these books are is an accumulation of old stories, old road stories that I heard riding up and down the road with these old veterans. And I'm coming up with a 3rd book, and this book will detail my time when I went to WWE the last time, and a few more things that I didn't cover in my first 2 books. Hopefully this will be out by, I don't know, I've written a lot of it. I just hadn't put it together, but be watching for it. I don't have a name for it yet. And if you want I don't even have it up here. I also have a diploma, the University of Dutch diploma that you can get. If you write to me at Dirty Dutch Mantell with 2 L's at gmail.com, I will get right back in touch with you.
And T-shirts are coming out soon. In fact, very soon. We've already made the first one and just doing sort of like tests on it to make sure it prints out okay. It's the you people mean nothing to me. You people, question mark, underlined, mean nothing to me.
A classic T-shirt. And they're probably, I had one when I was in Mid-South. That's You People Mean Nothing to Me. I think that was there, or maybe that was Continental. And what was the other one called?
Yes, You May Worship Me. And that got turned down. Go on, Dutch.
What do you mean it got turned down?
Oh, that got turned down. I can reapply for it because I, in the description, said you wore it in WCW, and it just went, this T-shirt cannot be sold because you've mentioned the word WCW in the description. That's how like tight they are with copyright. But anyway, that'll be out soon as well, by the way, everybody.
So if you mention something, even mention it, they'll turn it down.
Yes, so it's very much a trial and error. This is why this process is taking a bit longer than I thought it would.
I've never heard that before in my life.
No, I hadn't either. Because I thought maybe like because it was like the word worship in it. You know what I mean? And I thought maybe they might be funny about some religious T-shirt. No, it's because I mentioned WCW just in the description, not on the T-shirt.
Crazy.
A crazy day. Dutch, I put you in a bad mood straight away because you were talking about that time you wrestled a bodybuilder.
Oh, God.
Should we mention that now, or should we save it for another
you
time?
You can mention it now. We were talking about Bret Hart, and I said one of the things that I couldn't read Bret's book because he blames everybody else for whatever happened to him. It was never his fault, or it was somebody else trying to screw him, or it was Vince, or it was WCW, it was Goldberg. It was all these things. So I was telling James, I worked with this guy one time, a big bodybuilder that I don't even know how he got into business. He couldn't go more than 5 minutes because he would blow up and he'd be sucking wind. So I told him to make a little bit of a comeback on me, and he was blown up, and he started hammering me with those big arms. He had huge arms. One caught me on this side, one caught me on this side. I don't know why. He was just windmilling them. So I took him down. I said, I literally, I was going to choke him out. Like I was going to starve him for air, for oxygen, and he's already blown up, and he was begging me to let him up. So that's why I don't have any faith in any bodybuilders in the ring, because they don't go for cardio. They just go for size. And I tell you, another guy who blew up like that was Ultimate Warrior, but he never got over it. He went all through his WWE career still blowing up. He blew up with Hogan at WrestleMania, wherever it was, in Montreal. Was that it? When did Hogan wrestle?
Toronto
Warrior?
In that WrestleMania.
Oh yeah, he blew up in that, and Sting wasn't so bad. Sting was a little bit not as big, but he'd blow up too. They'd both blow up. So there's a lot of difference between a wrestler in wrestling shape and a bodybuilder in bodybuilding shape. I mean, if you're in wrestling shape, you have good cardio. The bodybuilders don't. So don't even suggest to me that this guy, just because he's got a good body, needs to get into wrestling. No, he needs to stay in bodybuilding and stand up there and pose. That's all he needs to do.
I think this might have been a Bret Hart quote, but I'm sure he said at one point, bodybuilding is just the most tedious sort of full-time activity. And it's also the most useless, because apart from looking good, you can't actually do anything with it. You know, you're aesthetically you aesthetically look great, but you can't do like any sport, basically, with it. Like wrestling, you blow up in 2 seconds.
Well, tell me the last time you saw a bodybuilder out playing basketball. No, you don't. Bodybuilders might be able to play football a little bit, but they can't play basketball or baseball or do any of those things that you got to have free movement of the body. See, actually, there's two guys. Who do you think makes a better wrestler, a football player or a basketball player?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I would actually say NFL player, because, you know, there's so, like Ernie Ladd, Bradshaw, so many of them came from that sport.
I would say, okay, I'm going to say it like this. I think a basketball player does, because they have to control the body. When they go in for a layup, they got to turn so they don't hit the guy here, there. Football player just creams the crap out of you. But basketball players don't. And how I learned that, Mark Calloway, The Undertaker, was a basketball player. Kane, you know, he was a basketball player, and that's why they were so easy, because it came naturally. It came naturally to them because they had control over their bodies. Football players, they don't care about control. They have control one way, and that is to halfway take your head off, which is a no-no in wrestling, or it's at least it's a no-no in my book. So, so I played. You know, we used to get these towns early, and there'd be a basketball court there. We'd be in a school or something. We'd ask the coach. He would always be around. Hey, you got a basketball? Yeah, here, guys. And we'd start playing. So it was me and a guy named Action Jackson, who was he was a big Afro-American guy from Dallas. And he used to work with Undertaker. He used to work with Mark in a bar. And Mark got him into wrestling. So Mark said, I'll play both you guys. We said, what? You're going to play both of us? He said, yeah. Well, he played both of us. And I'm a crappy basketball player. And I didn't know at the time, but Action Jackson was even worse than I was. And he played both of us and beat us about, I don't know, 18-10 or something. He just killed us. We'd go in there for a layup. He'd block it. You know, we go to shoot. He'd block it because he's 6'10", 6'11". And I never played basketball before. And he never let me forget that. So when you play a guy in his game, you're going to get beat. So where are we coming from today? It's like we're getting in a car. We're making a trip. Why don't we go today from Atlanta to Savannah?
How long's that?
It's about 3.5 hours.
We'll have to do the highlights then.
Yeah, we won't go that long, but it's a good trip to talk on. And I mentioned this before. This is where I learned how to negotiate in the wrestling business, how to politic in the wrestling business. This is how I learned. Everything I know about the wrestling business was sitting in the back seat on these long trips and listen to the veterans and the other guys talk about wrestling. I didn't know nothing about wrestling when I started, really. I just knew a little bit. And then slowly over time, I learned that it is a business. And you know what I didn't know? I didn't know they had an office in like every area of the country. I thought Atlanta and Charlotte and Florida were the only places that had wrestling. I didn't know Texas had wrestling. I didn't know that New York, when I started, I didn't know they had wrestling. or California. I didn't even know that stuff. One guy told me, he said, "Hey, you want to go to California?" I says, "And do what?" He said, "Wrestle." I says, "They got," I'm so stupid. I said, "They got wrestling in California?" He says, "Yeah." He said, "Listen, if you want to go, you just tell me. I'll book you all the way across the country and you can pay your way out there." So, and that's how I learned. Crazy. I hate to even admit that about myself, but I was really, really stupid when I started. I'm a little smarter now, but not that much. So,
do you know
ask
what?
me some questions.
Well, do you know, as we always say, we always deviate from the script, and we're 10 minutes in, we haven't done anything from the script at all. I'm going to ask you this. The first time, because there's a story that I heard years ago that you said was, you'd leave a territory and just go, F you, I'm never coming back, and blah, blah, blah. And then 2 years later, you find out that both of you need each other, and then you ring them up and say, "Hey, Bill, whatsoever. Dutch, I'm so glad you..." What was the first promotion you quit? Rather, on maybe bad terms, I don't know, but like the first promotion, you just went, "I can't deal with this anymore, see you later."
Well, amongst many, it was the earlier versions of Continental. It wasn't Continental. Continental was owned by Ron Fuller, but I worked for a company that had that. It was Montgomery, Alabama, and Birmingham, and this. I just walked out one night. I said, "Screw this. I'm not doing it no more." Kansas City was another one that I walked out on. Texas, I walked out on Texas one time. And I don't know. I walked out on a lot of them.
What's the general reason? Was it just like the travel?
It's money. I wasn't making any money. So if I'm not making any money, why hang around? So, and sometimes I would tell them and sometimes I wouldn't. So they say, where's Dutch or whatever my name was at the time? And, well, he's not here. Did he quit? I don't know. I hadn't seen him. Boom. And that's the thing about wrestling. You could quit. And that old story you were telling, like, I'd get mad, say you were the motor. I said, that James, that SOB, I'll never work for that son of a blah, blah, blah again. Then you say, "That damn Dutch, I'm never using him again. I'm never booking him in this territory." About 2 years later, a year and a half later, your business is bad, and I need a job, and I call you up, "James, Dutch, how you doing? Hey man, I'm leaving so and so. Can you got room for me?" "Hell yeah, come on. When can you start? I mean, what about tomorrow?" I said, "No, I need a little more time than that." See, then you're glad to see me. I'm glad you're there, and we're back to where we were. That's the old story in wrestling.
Oh, the beauty of the territories, isn't it? We are going to move on. We're going to do some news of the last week, and we have to open with the biggest news, the saddest news as well: the sudden death of Jay Briscoe, real name Jamin Pugh, at the age of 38. As we record this, the circumstances of the crash, it involved at least 2 cars. We don't know the full circumstances because this happened less than a day ago as we record. The police report states Laurel, Delaware, a fatal car collision in Laurel left 2 dead Tuesday evening, according to the Delaware State Police. The incident occurred in the area of Laurel Road and Little Hill Road around 5:30 p.m. local time and caused an extended road closure. And just before we went on air, it's also been revealed by, I believe, Jay's wife. Sorry, I need to just read this. Yes. Said that 2 of the kids were in the car at the same time, and one of them has got some serious injuries as well, and a back injury. And they're asking people for their support, hopefully that she's going to be able to walk properly afterwards. So it's a devastating car crash.
Whose kids were in the car?
Jay's.
Wow, 2 kids.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sad. That is really, really sad. So she put up a GoFundMe account?
No, she's just put up a social media post. I don't know if it's Instagram or Twitter. I think it's Instagram.
Well, folks, if you can help that family out, it'd be highly appreciated. Because he was a good guy. Both the brothers were. I met him in Puerto Rico. I don't know, probably, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. And I love that gimmick. They were two farmers from Delaware. Now that's a shoot. Two farmers from Delaware. But if you watch them on TV, you think they were straight from the hills of West Virginia. That's what they looked like, and they were great in the ring. I mean, they just had a different look about them. Of course, they were brothers, and I love those guys. It really, my condolences out to the family and the friends of Jay Briscoe. I mean, that wasn't his real name, but what's his real name? Pugh.
Jamin Pugh.
Well, I never knew that because it's actually wrestlers. We never ask for real names. We just go with by the work name, and that's how we know somebody. I mean, I've never walked around by, yeah, you so and so, but what's your real name? I've never walked up to anybody and ever asked them that. But it is a sad situation, state of affairs that he got killed. Who was at fault here?
We don't even know that at this. We don't even know that at this point. There was at least two cars in the crash, is all we know, and the driver or someone at least in the other car died as well. So it sounds like could have been head on. Who knows?
Okay, so the wife put up a post on Twitter.
Yeah.
Under what name? His name?
No, hang on. Let me have a look. Oh yes, Ashley Pugh.
Ashley Pugh. So. Folks, if you're looking for it, look under Ashley Pugh and you'll find it.
I can mention more stuff about Jay, but essentially 20 years almost in Ring of Honor. They were just stalwarts of Ring of Honor. They also went around the world, held the IWGP tag team titles and other wrestling things, but to be honest, the wrestling doesn't matter because a man has lost his life, and at this point, we can't really say any more than that apart from condolences to everybody involved.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, what bothers me, he had his two kids in the car. Usually, if he was on a road trip, it would just be him and his brother. But the two kids, that's the sad part. Well, it's sad about him too, but he had the two kids in the car too. Anyway, condolences, and hope the family's okay after this.
Absolutely. We will move on to lighter fare. You posted on Twitter a picture, a badly photoshopped picture. You explain it. Go.
So I saw this picture of Andre and Robert Wadlow, and I put up there, hey, when was this picture taken? Looks like in a WWE setting, WWE ring. And a lot of people says, and it was my sarcastic tone. I mean, it was my stab at humor. I'm gonna have to quit doing this because people just not getting my humor. They say, "Are you that brain dead? You can't tell." He died in 1940, so it was one of those things. It's one of those gotcha moments, but it wasn't really a gotcha moment. It was actually I ended up getting them. It's the way I worded it. Like I didn't know a lot about him, so he died in 1940. So he couldn't have had a picture taken with Andre. But anyway, people took it upon themselves to say, "Oh yeah, you're an idiot." You know, they love to do that anyway. So I just let it go.
It sort of exposes just how stupid people think they're really clever by going, actually, Dutch, you know, this is a Photoshop. It's like, well, it's obviously a photo.
Yes. And the guy, he was a real guy. He was 8 foot, 11 inches. He was from Illinois. And I read his whole bio. He never really left the town. I don't know what he did. I think he worked in the family business or something. But at 8'11", he was a pretty tall guy. Andre was 7'4". How big was who was that big tall guy they had in WCW?
Paul White, the Giant.
No, he was about it. Well, he wasn't as tall as Andre.
Big Show, essentially.
And they had another one called
Ron Reese.
He dressed up, whatever, but he was like he was like 7'10", and he dressed in like a.
Oh, I know, Elegante, George Gonzalez.
Yep. He was a big old boy. You know, most of those giants. I was talking to Big Show one day, and he told me he wasn't a giant. I said, "Well, you're big." He said, "Well, yeah, I am." But he says giants keep growing, and that's because of some chemical in the body that doesn't stop, and you just keep growing till they can stop that flow of whatever it is, and a hormone that's produced naturally by the body till it stops. And the giant told me that he stopped there because, but he and giants have this disease. I guess it's called giant's disease. But he wanted me to know that he wasn't a giant; he's just a big guy. And really, he's a. If you're ever around him, he moves. Well, you've seen him in the ring. He can really move well. He really can, and a good guy, and a good card player. I played him cards on the planes. He would just. I'm horrible at cards. I can't read faces. Apparently I can't read cards either. And he just stopped me. It got to be embarrassing. I'm glad we weren't playing for money. But he beat me out of 10 times. He'd beat me 8 times. He's a good card player, and I'm not.
Who's well, I mean, we probably already said it there, but who's the very tallest person you've ever seen up close and personal?
Well, probably Andre. Because you just, I'm not that tall anyway, but, you just look up. I've been in a few matches with Andre, and I'd heard stories about him that he don't like to be ribbed or whatever. And a lot of guys, since they talked to him in the dressing room, thought they were friends, and they would get cute in the ring with him. I did see him hit this one guy one time, just an open hand chop. He knocked him completely through the second and third rope, and he never touched anything. I thought he'd killed him. I mean, he chopped the living shit out of this guy, and you could almost hear, the air from his hand, just sucking the air out of the room when he hit the guy, and he hits you in the chest, which is a hard enough blow to take easy, let alone 400 pounds behind it. That's the last time. See, when Andre used to go to territories, they would put him in like a battle royal every night. Sort of, he could have a match, but you didn't want to really put him against one of your guys because unless the guy had a lot of heat on him, they were just waiting for Andre to beat the guy. But in the battle royals, you could see him up to 10 minutes, and then he'd go out and walk around the crowd. That's what the people wanted to see. And he used to be booked like the NWA champion. I don't know who booked him, but the NWA office used to book Flair and Funk and both Funks, the Briscoes. They would handle the bookings for the NWA champion out of the St. Louis office. I don't know who handled Andre's bookings, but I do know that the NWA champion, you could get him up to 5 times a year. And they would actually pick the dates for you to have him. You wouldn't send them dates. I'll take him here, here, and here. They would send you the dates that you have him. And you were obligated to book him. And I don't know how they paid the champion. I think he got 10% of the gross. 10% of the house, which the house may sell out. And the talent can make less money on a sellout than they would make on a normal house. I've done that because they pay the champion so much. So if you got, say, $10,000 to pay talent, well, if he's taking 30%, he's taking $3,000 of that. And where you would normally get $500, $600, $700, you might get $350. And I'm thinking, why in the hell bring the champion in? He's not helping me, but he was helping the office. So that's why they would do it.
Was that the same with Andre as well? Would he take 10% or whatever? Was it? Did he have the same percentage?
I think he was. And I think the NWA office, once he made it to the States, I don't think they booked him because he more or less broke in under Vince, didn't he? Or no?
Andre. No, I think he broke in Canada,
no, he couldn't have.
Montreal. In fact, I think he was in the UK. He broke in the UK before he came to America. Andre did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know who booked him. I'm gonna
I
have
think
to
it was
check
Vince
that out.
Senior. Vince Senior. I think the WWF office was booking Andre out, and then maybe around '83 or whenever, Vince decided to take Andre back and not let him go anywhere else.
Okay. Well, things like that. I was learning the business then. Those things like that I didn't worry about. That was their business. And one reason I lasted so long in the business, I didn't involve myself in a lot of other things that didn't involve me. You know that I'm saying, stay in your lane. I stayed in my lane and avoided a lot of stuff. Of course, that meant all that gossip you hear about in the dressing rooms. You know, I just stayed in my lane. I just heard it and kept going. I never brought it up to anybody, or because it didn't concern me. So if it didn't concern me, that's their business. I let it go at that.
What did that guy do to Andre to warrant getting chopped through the ring in that battle royal? Do you remember?
I think he pissed him on the butt or something. He didn't like it. Andre was very temperamental at times. I mean, sometimes he'd be in a bad mood. And I can see why, driving in these cars. You know, he couldn't get comfortable in the cars. He was on the road all the time. He was probably tired. And the guy got cute with him in the ring or something, and Andre just knocked the crap out of him. And that served notice to everybody in that ring. Hey, don't get too cute because I'll halfway kill you. You know, you act differently around you act differently around people that you think can kill you with one punch. So, but I guarantee you, the guy never ever messed with Andre again. So he fixed that problem.
Next up, Dave Meltzer reporting verifiably false news. I thought I'd bring this up because I know you're...
Are you kidding me?
It's your favourite Dave Meltzer, so I thought I'd bring this up.
I love him. I sent him a Christmas card.
The story involves somebody pretending to be a wrestler called Kato Ishida, using a disposable email address like Hotmail or something like that. And he detailed alleged upheaval within Dragon Gate being one of the smaller Japanese promotions due to the promotion's new booker. Ishida, quote-unquote, said not to verify that it was him through social media, as Dragon Gate had access to his social media accounts. Meltzer fell for it and posted several stories from May 2022 onward, using the hoaxer's tips as his main source. Dave Meltzer actually did, when he find out, he did apologise on Monday, January 16th. I did not know that I was being hoaxed, and I was being hoaxed. Meltzer said, I feel horrible about it. Obviously, it's not a minor thing to me. Obviously, it's a big, big thing to me, and I better never let this happen again. So at least he showed some contrition.
I don't believe it. I don't believe nothing Meltzer says. So that tells me that if he's been hoaxed once and didn't verify the sources, remember, that was always one of his big deals. He verifies this and that, and before he prints it, but he didn't verify that. He was so eager to get some news out there that nobody else has reported on that he printed it. So and how long? He's been around 40 years. So if he has been hoaxed once, and how long has email been around? Email been around 40 years, 30 years?
At least probably the late 80s. I don't know.
Okay.
It was in the 90s, definitely.
And because he loves Japan, anything from Japan, he was like a fish who wanted some bait. And the bait was dangling and he hit it. So he should have been embarrassed. But if he's done it once, he's done it before. And that's what we've been saying all these years about Meltzer. He doesn't really verify some of his sources. I mean, a lot of people won't even talk to him. A lot of the independents will, because they think if they talk to him, you know, he'll put their name out and he'll put them over, and it'll be, but it's nothing new, because a guy who used to, correspond with him regularly was Paul Heyman. That's why ECW got so popular, because Heyman, of course, but at least with Heyman, he was kind of getting the truth. And a lot of guys say they hate Meltzer, but that's because he's never done anything for them. You know who else used Meltzer a lot to advance his political goals in wrestling?
Go on. I've got a name in mind, but go on.
Say it.
Eddie Gilbert.
Eddie Gilbert did it. Eddie Gilbert did it all the time. Another one was Brody, because Brody did it because of Japan. He wanted the Japan people to read that he was talking to another Japanese promotion, or Vince was talking to him, or somebody else was talking to him, because that raised, and I don't blame Brody, it raised his aura in Japan, got him a lot of money. So, and there's been tons and tons and tons of other ones, not necessarily wrestlers. A lot of promoters did it because they would use Meltzer as their sounding board, and for something they couldn't say themselves, they'd use Meltzer to get it out there. So,
can you think of? It doesn't have to be Meltzer; it can be anyone you want it to be, Wade Keller or whoever, that published a story involving you, and you read it and thought that absolutely did not happen that way whatsoever.
Well, I've read reports about me that I wondered, and part of it was true, but I wonder, where did he get this? Because what it was, I was working for WCW, and they was going to, I forgot what they were going to do. I was finishing up. I was leaving, but that made it. But see, you only know if I'm finishing up if I tell somebody. I mean, for me, but I didn't tell anybody. So how did that news get out there that I was finishing up? Somebody from the office, from the booking department, or they had to be in contact with Meltzer. That don't mean a lot because I was leaving anyway, but I'm wondering, how does he get that information? And you'll never know. I will never know. Not that I really want to know, but it wasn't just one of the guys talking. It was one of the people inside the office. Now, big business now, if you do that, or if you report to a trade magazine, or you can get fired if they find out who does it. But back in those days, we just called them stooges and let it go at that.
Next order of business, we're going to say Santino Marella. We're going to say, because it's true, Santino Marella signed to Impact and will be Impact's new director of authority. Now, I'm going to sort of throw my 2 cents into this. He's a comedy character who's the director of authority. That sort of doesn't quite jive right for me.
I don't get it either. I guess he's going to be. I think if he gets serious, it kills him. I mean, it kills the director of authority position. I don't know how they're going to do it, but let's wait and see. Maybe he'd just be I tell you what he could be. He could be a heel and joke around, and the baby faces can't get anything done. They may be able to do something with that. I'm interested in seeing how that works out. I'm gonna have to watch how they handle that.
I like that. Nothing can get done properly in TNA office from many, many years ago. That seems to have been the case.
Oh no. I mean, they kept tripping over themselves. It was just, I mean, I got so many TNA stories, but I can't. If I got into TNA stories right now, it'd take the rest of the podcast.
We've got TNA stories. We've got TNA stories. So after we do the news, a couple more bits, and then we're going to get into the meat, I suppose, of the podcast, even though it's probably going to be the minority of the podcast, is we're going to go back through Jeff Jarrett's stuff. His My World podcast thingy. And eventually, when we get there in 10 years' time, we get to the TNA stuff.
So you like Jeff's podcast?
I like that one that I've listened to, which was that one.
Yeah. Well, he does a lot of history. Of course, a lot of history of TNA that he's letting out now. I didn't even know. I mean, they had a, I'm on Smoky Mountain. Do you know Rick Rubin?
Yes, music producer. He was the
I
he was the money man, wasn't he?
In Smoky Mountain. And I worked there the whole time and never knew it. They never told me. So when I finally read that Rick Rubin was the money guy behind Smoky Mountain Wrestling, I went, and I don't know if anybody else knew it or not, but I didn't know it. I didn't know he put the money up, which is, you remember the mummy on Smoky Mountain Wrestling? Oh, it's hilarious. The only reason the mummy was there because Rick Rubin wanted to see a mummy. So they put, and it is so unlike Cornette to use a character like the mummy, but because Rick Rubin wanted it, they put him out there. And they put him with a manager. I forgot his name that he was using.
Daryl Van Horn.
Yeah, Daryl Van Horn. And I like when they cut his finger off. Do you ever see that?
Yeah. And
sand came out. The sand fell out. Oh, I laughed. But it was entertaining. I mean, I knew the guy that did it actually did a pretty good job with it. But the mummy, I've seen the mummy twice. Once on Titanis Del Ring. Remember, I've talked about Titanis Del Ring, and Smoky Mountain. The only time I ever saw the mummy, but they were a lot of things that, I went through my whole career not knowing certain things, like Rick Rubin would be the backer from Smoky Mountain Wrestling, which leads me to another question. How did Cornette ever come in contact with Rick Rubin? Do you know that?
Oh, did he meet him at a gig or something? I know Rick Rubin was a big wrestling fan, and I don't know if he met him through Ric Flair, or I think he met him in the WCW days, and then Jim Cornette said that he was thinking of opening his own deal. Hang on, I've been signed on another device. What's happened there? I don't know is the answer, but he met him in like a year or two before, and then somehow money ended up going his way.
Well, anyway, that's just the way conversations go down the road. If we don't know something, we say, well, whatever, and we go to the next subject.
Well, talk about the mummy a bit more then. What else did he do apart from the sand finger cutting? I mean, sure, did any of the fans look and believe?
Well, it's in Smoky Mountain, so I don't think they really believed it, but it was entertaining, and they put up with it. And he wasn't there long, maybe a month, 6 weeks at the most, I think. How you gonna book a mummy? I mean, so he loses. He don't care. So he gets beat. But I don't think he ever got. I never saw him get beat. I did see him on a show one time in Johnson City, which is one of their bigger shows. And Johnson City had a really nice indoor arena, and it was almost. And I've never seen Johnson City sold out ever, even in a small arena. But this was the closest that I'd ever seen the Johnson City area sell out. He'd probably seat 6,000, 7,000 people. They probably had 5 there, which if you usually used to going into arena and 1,000 people there, when they put 5,000 in there, it looks like a full house. So, but they usually go to smaller buildings. And I think he was on that show, that mummy was on that show. That's where I met Dave Meltzer one time.
Oh, really?
at Johnson City. And I told him then, I said, I don't like you, man. I just don't like you. I said, and he was trying to back off. Yeah, trying to be friendly because, hell, he didn't know me from Adam's House Cat. So I'm telling me, you just make, this was years and years ago. I said, you just make stuff up, man. And what I was saying, you've never been in the ring, you've never trained, you've never done this, you've never done that. You just picked up a pen and paper, which he was using the old process of where there's a need, fill it. And he saw a need for wrestling fans to get information, and he's been highly, highly successful. They used to mail that out every week. I don't know what it costs. I I would read them, but I would never buy them. I would read them if they were laying around the dressing room or, little mimeograph copy of whatever he come up with. I will say one thing about Meltzer. He is a prolific writer. I've said this before. He's not a bad writer at all, except that he will make certain stories fit his narrative. Therefore, he's reported the truth. He calls himself a journalist, but I didn't see a lot of journalistic stuff in his writing other than an obituary. He was very good when a guy died. He was actually pretty good at that. And he's from California. I don't know where he's from, but
San Jose.
He started, and I don't even know how he got news of his newsletter out. I think through the wrestling magazines. That little ads in the back, they're about this big. I think that's how he got the news out about his newsletter, reports all the news in professional wrestling. And he got him a mailing list, and he got him some customers, and he started writing.
With the Mummy, he was called Rob Mays. He was the one who wrestled as Prince Karras. And I don't suppose you ever saw him in makeup, did you? Or like trying to wrap him up?
I don't remember that name. I think his name was, I knew his name, but it wasn't Robert Mays. But then again, he could have had a wrestling name, and then he could have had a real name. Robert Mays may have been his real name. I know him. I think about. Hopefully, I think about it. I think of his name before we end this podcast today.
We'll go.
Not that it matters. People say, "Okay, you give us a name. We still don't know who he is." Go ahead.
The last bit of news: latest Vince McMahon sort of WWE nonsense. The second SEC filing made on January 11th made it clear that two board members. I won't give the names because I'll blow the I'll blow the pronunciation of them. He was head of WWE's audit committee and the lead investigator into McMahon's hush money scandals. They both left the board. They both quit. A couple of lawsuits out there about Vince coming back. But Nick Khan gave a interview to Bill Simmons, I think, yesterday as we record this. And on Vince's retirement announcement, Nick says, when Vince stepped down, anyone who believed that was permanent didn't know him. That was never going to happen, but I'm appreciative of the fact he gave it 5-6 months, let the dust settle a little bit, then came back in the way that he's come back. So Nick Khan, maybe he's just saying that now, or maybe he always knew that this was going to be a fake retirement.
Well, that's his view now. I don't know. But I always had doubts, even when he stepped down, and the way he stepped down, I'm thinking, there's no way he can come back. There's no way. But I failed to realize Vince's penchant for revenge. He went home, but he damn sure didn't forget, because Vince is vindictive as hell. You don't get Vince. You may get him one time, but he will stay up late at night thinking about how to get you back. He will actually re-sign you to screw you again. He will say, it's all over, come back. And he'll sign you just to go back and screw you over one more time, just to say that he got the last word. And the more I think about it, Vince went home. A lot of people think he's playing checkers and watching TV and enjoying his golden years of his life. That's the farthest thing from what he was doing. And I brought this up before. He was on that phone. He was talking to every lawyer that could help him, talking about all the investors. And he had this in mind when he left. And Nick Khan said, I appreciate you staying gone 5 or 6 months and letting it die down. Well, Vince has good timing, and he came back at the right time. I think for him, might not have been the right time for Nick Khan and the kids, but he came back and he said, hey, I'm not leaving like this. I'm not leaving in disgrace. I'm leaving on my terms. And when he blackmailed him and said, hey, you can sell it to whoever, but I'm not going to vote for it. So whoever you sell it to has to have my stamp of approval on it, or it's not going. So he said, the best thing for you to do is let me come back. Let me get back in my old position, even though he's not in creative. He says,
wink.
Yeah, he said, I'm not in creative, but I don't think he can help, but I think he's still in creative. They just not alleging that he's in it. He's going through Triple H, and he will be telling Triple H, not telling him what to do, but highly suggesting what he wants done.
I'm going to give you a couple more quotes. On Stephanie leaving, Nick Khan says, at this moment in time, I think she felt her work was done for now. Nothing is permanent. Life is long. Let's see. Khan also said the rumours regarding a sale to Saudi Arabia last week were 100% fake, 100% made up. So in this process, Vince McMahon is there to oversee it. It's his controlling share. I'm involved in it. Triple H is involved in it. The board's obviously involved in it, etc., etc. But he says that the Saudi sale story, there was no particular truth to those rumours whatsoever, even though Vince may sell to somebody, but all options are out there. Who knows why the Saudi Arabia thing caught fire so quickly?
I don't know either, but I still think Saudi Arabia's in the running. Big time. They have the money. They don't sell these companies just for friendship and a handshake and, hey, great doing business with you. When's the next time they're going to have an $8 billion property to sell? It's going to be a while before it gets there. They have $620 billion in their fund right now, and they're trying to change their country. They want to be more like a Western society. And WWE already knows them. And they're dealing with them, and they know each other personally. So you can say Comcast and Netflix and HBO and Amazon. You can say it all you want, but I still think that Saudi Arabia thing is sitting there. And what they might do with Saudi Arabia, they tell them, say, well, maybe not now. They're going to explore what all these other companies will pay them, and then go back to the Saudis and say, we got a deal on the table for $7.5 billion. Can you top that? $8 billion sold.
I actually disagree that Saudi Arabia wants to be a more westernized country. I think that's a front to get more investment and to get a bigger sort of footprint on the world stage. That's my 2 cents. Also in the SEC filing on January the 11th, it was revealed that Shane McMahon earned $828,000, even though he was fired or sent home at the before February, essentially. He was in the company about 3.5 weeks of the entire year.
Well, they paid him the remainder of his salary, I would imagine, and then the WrestleMania payoff, I guess. And they just sent him home, but they didn't take him off the payroll. So that's how he made $828,000.
Oh, that's more than I pay you for this podcast.
Hey, that's a great job. If you get $828,000, it's a great job if you can get it. But then again, what's his last name?
Yeah.
See, and he'll take care of his son. And you hear about Stephanie and the boy, they're arguing with Vince. They're not getting along. They're family. Families are supposed to argue, but at the end of the day, Vince is still going to have last word, and they know that. They can bitch and moan and pitch a hissy fit and go home and stomp around, but it's still not going to change Vince, because he knows what he's doing, as proven by if you can get run off from a company that you started and have to force your way back in by blackmail. Well, it wasn't really blackmail, it was just a threat that we're going to sell who I want to, so you better be making amends with me. Now, what would have happened if he hadn't have gone back and they said, oh, we want to sell to Amazon, and Vince says no? What would they do then?
Go to Netflix.
Well, he may say he said, "I'm going to say no to everybody till I like it." Till I, what he said was, "I'm going to say no to everything till I'm back in there."
Hmm.
So they had to put him back in there so he can negotiate the sale of the company. Now, this has been rumored for 4 years that they're looking to sell WWE. And at first, I said, I don't think they're going to sell it. But hell, I don't. What do I know? But they were, and it kept on and on and on, and then Vince and his attorneys and all his media experts, they've orchestrated this company to be right at this very particular spot right now, worth a fortune, and they're getting ready to unload it. Now, if they unload it to the Saudis or to anybody else, how much control will this other company want? Or are they going to let the wrestling people run wrestling? Because a lot of wrestling, not companies, but a lot of wrestling enterprises have been ruined by people that own them. They want this and they want that and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but it was always owned by a wrestling family, a wrestling person who knew what the wrestling fans will buy. And he also should have learned in the last couple of years what they won't buy. But I'm saying if the Saudis do take over, will there be any changes? Or if Amazon, if they take over, will they want a certain look to the show? They can certainly say that since they own the company, and that doesn't sit well with fans. Now, Saudi Arabia, what I'm hearing is they're not able to sell sponsors to that. They own the golf. They own that golf company, the golf.
Yep, Live Golf.
What's that mean?
I don't know. I don't know what the acronym is, but it's essentially meant to be a PGA Tour rival.
And they signed a bunch of golfers.
Yep. Brooks Koepka and Sergio Garcia. I know all these names will go over people's heads, but yeah, big names.
So if they signed them, what does that mean? They're going to pay them all year?
Yeah, there's a roster of golfers there that I think they get paid a certain amount to be there, to jump from the PGA, and then there are prizes for whoever wins the tournament that week, and first, second, third, a ladder down of prize money.
They are having tournaments now.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
it's just not shown on TV.
Exactly, because the PGA is too powerful. And you just know that you know what I mean?
That sounds like a monopoly to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll see. If there's any legal actions that come from that, they got the money to hire the lawyers.
Well, so do the PGA, let me tell you. The PGA have come back with trying to up.
They don't have $620 billion, though, do they?
No, but I think they could afford some decent sized, some giant lawyers. Some well-known lawyers to defend them. There is one more bit of news I will quickly ask you, and then whatever time we've got remaining, we'll ask you some questions from the Jeff Jarrett podcast. We sort of talked about this before, but former Sasha Banks, now Mercedes Mone, will be working a handful of matches for Stardom in Japan, which is the women's sort of New Japan. It's owned by the same company, what's it called, Bushy Road. And she can now pursue outside projects like acting, and she is also the most highly paid, I don't even think foreigner, I mean especially per match, she's the most highly paid person in Japan wrestling now, which is just crazy because I don't see how she warrants that over Chris Jericho a few years ago, who actually filled arenas.
I don't know how they base how she's worth. I don't begrudge her the right to be regarded that way because it's a lot of money. But they said they got 40,000 subscriptions. What does that mean? To their website or what?
I think it's to their version of the WWE network. So I think it's New Japan World.
Well, they're not idiots either, so they're basing that on something. I don't think, but I am glad she got that because now the other girls that go over there, if they leave WWE, they might have a path following her. And so, but I'm talking about a woman who never even said hello to me when I was in WWE. The whole time I was there, she never even said nothing.
Did you say hello to her?
I didn't say hello to her, but she was always too busy or whatever, you know. But see, the rule in wrestling is the younger talent always introduces themselves to the older talent. And maybe I had it wrong. Maybe I should have went up and I don't know. But I never said hello to her and she never said hello to me. I don't think she ever acknowledged me one way or the other, which was okay. And she wasn't mean or anything, and she didn't throw things at me or nothing. We just never crossed paths verbally.
We will, for whatever time we've got left in the podcast, I've got questions for you, and we're going to be talking about, once again, the My World podcast with Jeff Jarrett that he dedicated to you. We're dedicating 1 billion questions to that podcast and what they discussed as well. I've already put in Rip Rogers. We asked that last time. Something I didn't ask is, Jeff talks about Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett splitting booking duties. Why did they do this?
Because Lawler didn't want to work during football season. Seriously. He's a big Cleveland Browns football fan, and he didn't want to be Saturday at TV. He didn't have to run to Cleveland to see the game or wherever they were. He wanted to go up Cleveland on a Friday, and so he'd be there Saturday, and he could go to the game Sunday and then come back Monday for Memphis. And sometimes he would just send an interview into Memphis TV to play about his match Monday, or sometimes he'd do TV, but he didn't want to be. If he was the booker, he would have to go to Memphis and Louisville and Evansville and Nashville. He didn't want to do that. He wanted his week, other than his Cleveland Browns football, he wanted it free. I don't blame him. And that's why Jerry Jarrett would step in the wintertime, and then Lawler would come back in the summer. But it gave both of them a break. They didn't burn out. But Lawler coming back in the summer is the best time of year because kids are out of school. And I mean, business was always up in the summer. I don't care what you had. But business was always up or booming in the summer, especially around Memphis. You go to those high school gyms, be hotter than hell in there, but you'd have 2,000 people sitting in there. And business was good. That's why they switched back and forth. And actually, it was a good idea.
Was there any issues like disjointed booking philosophy when Jerry Lawler would just take off and then Jerry would go, oh, God, right, what have I got to do now?
Jerry was more into stories. Lawler was more into entertainment because he would bring a monster in a box out. You'd have to be around. And you can say it's stupid, but it actually worked in those days. And he would use a lot of gimmicks. So he would use a lot of gimmicks, and Jerry Jarrett, not so much. He was actually more old school than Lawler was. And it was just a different way of booking. Of course, I enjoyed both of them. Both of them actually worked at the time. So they were good.
Now this is sort of a follow-up of a question I asked 2 weeks ago, so it'll make no sense, but I couldn't remember Billy Joe Travis's first name. I just remembered something Travis. So I Googled Travis, Dutch Mantell, Travis, basically. And the first video that came up was one from this very YouTube channel, and then the second one under it was a match featuring you versus Paul Orndorff from the NWA, WCW in 1990. And I watched the entire match, and it was just a really basic, fun, logical match, as you would expect, of course. Memories of wrestling Paul Orndorff. Was that the first time you wrestled him, or did you see him in Georgia or wherever beforehand?
I met him in Florida. Never worked with him. I never worked with him till I got to WCW. And that was just like a match on TV. I never worked any angles with him. but Paul always liked me for some reason, and I liked him. So when you get two guys together that like each other, and Paul wasn't like, I'm a big star, you got to do this for me. He wasn't like that. So if I did something to him, he'd sell it. Selling's the whole deal. He has to make me look credible that I posed a threat to him, that I can actually knock him down or slam him or do some things to him. And he was good at that. So, and he was a great, great athlete. I read up on Paul Orndorff. He played football at the University of Tampa. Actually, he was a running back, I think. And he actually got drafted by the NFL. He didn't ever start, but he was a friend of Mike Graham. They went to school together. And Dick Slater was another in that bunch that they went to school together. I think Brian Blair was another one that went to school with Mike. They all ended up in wrestling because they were big wrestling fans growing up. And Eddie, the father, he liked them. So when they expressed a desire to get into wrestling, he helped them. And when he got them in, Brian Blair, he did a lot of good stuff. And, Orndorff went to WWE. And then Mike Graham, of course, he never really left Florida. He worked for WCW later on. And then Brian Blair went to WWF. So they were all highly successful in the years that they were in wrestling. But Paul Orndorff, great guy. And one of the stories that I think that people like to hear, he was a tough son of a bitch. He was tough. One of his legends is he was working at WCW as like an assistant after his wrestling days were kind of over. He was working as an assistant, and he told Van Vader to be there at a certain time to do these interviews. And Van Vader was late. And then Paul said something about it. Van Vader says, "What are you going to do about it?" So Paul beat him up, knocked him down, knocked him out or something. But you imagine, Orndorff, he only weighed he wasn't a little guy, but about 230, but Vader was over 400. And they said he beat the shit out of him and knocked him out. And that was the end of that. But there's a lot of stories about Orndorff around the Tampa area. Like of him beating people up, him and Slater both. They were two rough young men. So
Brian Blair, who I think was best friends with, or one of his best friends for many years, said that once, I don't know if it was on a bet or whatever it was, that he had relations with 7 ladies in one night during a wrestling show, in an intermission or something like that. It's like, how do you even organize that, Paul Orndorff?
Paul Orndorff?
Yeah. I don't even know how you'd organize that. I mean, that seems like a lot of planning.
I don't know. I don't know how you would organize that, to tell you the truth.
When you...
how the question to me is, how could you be physically able? I mean, I don't know.
I'm asleep after the first time anyway. With Orndorff's deteriorating arm this time, because he had the neck injury, the neck impingement, it killed the muscles in his arm, nerves in his arm. Did you have to be specifically careful with Paul as far as not going too near his neck, or did anything else ache? Where specific things?
I think he never said a word about it when I worked with him. I don't think it was bothering him that bad. And I never noticed it, to tell you the truth. I didn't even know the story the last couple of years when he passed away. And I heard all the stories about his arm. But I think his arm was deteriorating. He had lost movement in the later years. But as a guy, I really like Paul Orndorff.
Do you remember Paul Orndorff's very brief run in Smoky Mountain Wrestling? Were you there at that time?
I was there. But I think those guys at the time, it was like Arn Anderson coming in. They wouldn't come in full time. They would come in for like a 6-week run. And Arn would come in for a 6-week or 2-month run because he wasn't doing anything in Charlotte. So they were just filling in open dates. So that's how they would come in there.
The referee for this match that I thought I'd bring up is Nick Patrick. Do you have any specific Nick Patrick stories?
Not really. Nick was always kept under control by his father, who was Jody Hamilton, who was one half of the Assassins team. And Jody kind of kept Nick under control. Of course, he told him about the things to do and not to do. Since he got him a job as referee, he said, hey, just don't go out and do anything outrageous, because if he did get out of line, Jody would be the first one to straighten him out. I remember Jody Hamilton as one of the Assassins and Tom Ernesto, the other one. I think they were one of the greatest teams I ever saw, and they still probably in the top 5 now. The Andersons are our team, and they try to say some of these teams today are like them. I don't see it, but maybe I'm looking through a different lens time-wise, because the Assassins, I don't know if you ever have you ever heard one of their interviews? They never raised their voice. They never raised their voice, and they talked in such a way that there was an element of danger just in their voice, and they were very, very well spoken. I got to tell you, this is one time I hitchhiked to a town one day because my car broke down. It was Carrollton, Georgia, and I had just started. And I was behind all the other guys because I'd left late. My car wouldn't crank or something. So I got to get to this town. So I'm hitchhiking, and this guy stops and picks me up, and he's a wrestling fan. And he's going to Carrollton. And he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to Carrollton. He said, I am too. Really? He said, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to the wrestling matches. He said, I am too. He's a big fan. He knew who it was. I didn't know that when he picked me up. So he's telling me, he says, let me ask you something. You know, a fan, when they say, hey, let me ask you something. I went, what? He looked around, just me and him in the truck, and he looked around like somebody's listening. Like, who's going to be listening? He said, them assassin fellers, who are they? And I went, oh boy, I wish you hadn't asked that. He went, why? I said, now don't tell nobody that I told you this. And he says, what? I says, they're wanted for murder out in California. They killed this guy and they had to leave. So they came to Georgia and put on a mask. Really? I said, yeah, don't tell nobody. Don't tell nobody, because, you know, the FBI is looking for them and everything. Oh, I won't. So when I told him that, I know that's the first thing he's going to say when he got out. He said, hey, I brought that Dutch Mantell. Said my name wasn't Dutch Mantell then. He brought him there. I know he told his friend right when he got out of the truck. So the old man who picked me up, this is a true story. I noticed that I hadn't, you know, he'd usually say hey or hello or what, how you doing? But I noticed he hadn't come around for about, I don't know, a month or two. And I went to my car one night, and this guy was out there, and he says, hey, Dutch. I said, how you doing? He said, you know that guy that picked you up and you was hitchhiking that time and brought you here? I said, yeah. He said, he was my father. I said, yeah, how's he doing? He said, well, he died. That's why he wasn't there. I said, what happened? He said, well, he just got sick. He passed away. But boy, he thought a lot of you. He did. Well, I thought, you know, I enjoyed riding with him. I'm glad he gave me the ride. You know, what are you going to say? And he says, but I just want you to know one thing. What? He never told anybody about that assassin team. Nobody. I said, oh, well, good for him. Now, you know, he told his son. Who'd his son tell? Oh, I still laugh about that. That's a true story. He never told anybody about those assassin guys.
You know, just because you mentioned Jody, what was he doing in WCW at the time? Was he backstage?
No, he was,
what was his
backstage.
duties?
He run the go position. He didn't help them book. He would just, you know, he was usually just there on TV. And I think he had a wrestling school too. He did the wrestling school on his own, And then he kind of combined that with WCW. They would send him talent. They would pay him for that. And he ran the go position, and he had a runner, and whoever was up, he'd send them, go get them, tell them to be here, and he'd send you to go. So really, really, Jody Hamilton was another. These old-time wrestlers were tough bastards. They had to be, because back when they broke in, they'd be in a ring with other tough bastards, so they had to be able to defend themselves pretty well, or they wouldn't have made it. Because Jody was so big, I don't know who anybody could take him down anyway.
There's one more thing I want to mention about the match. And WCW and the phrase international object is uttered by
God.
Jim Ross. TBS imposed nonsense political correctness that failed to grasp the double meaning of the word foreign. I asked this to Eric. By the way, this is probably an announcement. I interviewed Eric Bischoff last week. That he'll be coming up this weekend. And I was asking for more examples of just TBS, Turner, just complete stupidity as far as things like that go.
So what's the question about the foreign
international objects and other stupid WCW buzzwords like that?
Well, that was trying to be, I don't know, politically correct, I think. That was when you'd have to give another definition to. And the international objects, a wrestling fan said that there, said, wait a minute, you should be a foreign object. We can't say foreign anymore. I don't know. It was just an international object. Or they may have thought that Jim Ross was just trying to be cute with it. But it never caught on.
Do you know what the story is? I'll tell you. Eric said to me that was a Ted Turner from himself edict, because he hated the word foreign. So whenever Eric would go to him and say, we're talking about foreign markets, and he'd say, don't say foreign, say international. And that ended up somehow bleeding from Ted Turner from the top down.
Well, who set the rule? Ted?
He was Ted himself, yeah.
Okay. Ted was, I was at Channel 17 before it became the Superstation. That was the company I was working for, and this was back before anything. I mean, they had one company there, and they got on TBS. They used to be on like Channel 11 or Channel, I don't know what other channel in Atlanta, but I don't know how they ended up on Channel 17. But that's how it expanded when Channel 17 became the Superstation. So we used to get to TV early sometimes. Ted Turner would be at the station, and he'd come in and say hello. How you guys doing? Very friendly. So one day I'm in there, another true story, and he has this lady friend with him, and he's showing her the station. And he said, well, this is a studio, and says, we have wrestling here on one of our live shows, or he's telling her, and, here's some of the wrestlers. Guess who that lady was?
Go on.
Sophia Loren. And he was showing her the station. I went, what the hell? But he walked through like he just one of the guys, and he said, hey, say hello to Sophia, guys. And we all went, hey, what you going to say, And he had another big star that he brought through she was with him. It's on a Saturday morning too. So, but he was a very friendly guy, very approachable. And I think that's why he was as successful as he was.
Yeah. Is this in 72, 73 when you were breaking in?
Probably. That's 50 years ago. 50 years ago. Now, Ted is up where? In Montana now? He's not dead, is he?
No, he's still alive. I believe he's like maybe of a private owner. Like he owns the most land in the United States. Something like that.
Really?
Yeah. And it's all wilderness land and stuff. So it's sort of.
I heard he was up in Montana or Wyoming or somewhere. But anyway, good guy.
With WCW, when you were back in 1990, 1991, did you ever end up in one of those like big group photos with Ted Turner and a load of wrestlers behind him smiling?
I never ended up in one of those ever. Wish I had been, but I didn't. But he has said And you can look this up. Without wrestling, he said his station may not have made it. He said wrestling paid the bills. He said without wrestling, he said, I don't know how he would have done. So he had a lot of appreciation for professional wrestling. When the other stations were turning it down, he was begging for it because it reached the people he wanted it to reach. He reached the regular people. He reached working class America. And I've told this a lot of times. I said, a lot of times when I get in a ring and I look out, even in WWE, you see the big sellout and you look around, especially in the country. What you're looking at, and what I finally decided, what I'm looking at is America. That's what I'm looking at out there. Working America, people that go to work every day, send their kids to school, pay taxes, vote. But that's what I'm looking at out there. That's what its main appeal is. As long as you don't make it dirty or, kind of crude, you'll have that group because that's who it appeals to. And I met a lot of doctors and a lot of lawyers. They said, "Oh no, I think why TV stations look down on it because they thought it was base. They thought it was the lowest you can go, but that's not it." I met a lot of doctors and a lot of lawyers, a lot of teachers, and they love it. They're big wrestling fans, except they won't tell you they wouldn't tell you if they were wrestling fans. They may today, but they didn't before. It had what they call the country music syndrome. Years ago, people would never tell you they listened to country music because it made them look country. It made them look less than the cool kids. But that was the same people that wrestling drew, was the country music people. And I was always proud to be a part of it. I loved wrestling fans because without them, I would maybe had to go out and get a real job. And I didn't mind getting a real job, but after I got there, they wanted me to actually do something like work. And I didn't, and the times that 7 to 3 didn't work. I was more like a 10-15-ish type of guy to like 2 o'clock. I could do that. The 4-hour deal didn't be good.
That's basically our podcast schedule that we do. 10:30 till 2 or something like that we record.
Well, it works good for me.
You don't have to leave the house. It's perfect. We will end on this final question. Oh, also, I just want to make mention that people always talk about the glorious mustache, but in the 90s, people don't mention the fantastic mullet that you had as well, which we should pay tribute to at some point.
Well, I never thought about really, it's just guys wore their hair that way. And what I would do, he was short on top and a mullet in the back. So I had both of it. So if you're just looking straight onto me, I had like shorter hair, much shorter hair, but in the back, it was the mullet. So, and people, when they started saying something about it, that's when I cut it off.
Well, we know what we say, don't we? It's business at the front, party at the rear.
Say what now?
It's business at the front, party at the back.
Oh, well, that's what it was then.
Yeah, for some reason, the mullet seemed to last like 10 years longer in wrestling than anywhere else. We will end on this question.
Hey, I saw a movie yesterday. Have you ever seen The Wrestler?
Yeah. We've discussed The Wrestler. You hated it.
I did hate it, but my daughter, she wanted to see it again. I said, this is a horrible movie. It's depressing as hell. He was a bum. He was a loser, living in a trailer. He couldn't even pay his rent, but yet he was a big star. And there are really guys out there like that still think, well, maybe I'll make the big time again. Hey, if you hadn't made it by the time you make 30, maybe it's time to look for something else because time's running out and promoters don't have time for older guys. Now they do maybe now a little bit, but you better have something that you're known for or something that's going to sell some tickets or create some interest or you're not going to make it.
I am going to give you the final question of the podcast. The Lonesome Pine Summit. Extended percussion entitled
Lonesome
War Games.
Pine. There's a Lonesome Pine series. Where'd you get Summit?
On the thing at the front, I think it said some. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the Lonesome Pine something.
I know what you.
Extended percussion entitled War Games, accompanied by 2 wrestlers, is what the announcer said. They didn't even bother naming you at the beginning. Conducted by Walter Mays. Now, back to the Jarrett special on you, and of course it couldn't go without bringing up the now famous match between you and Jeff Jarrett, wrestling in front of a live orchestra and somehow becoming the only 2 wrestlers to ever be inducted into the Smithsonian Institute. How long before the match did you know about the orchestra deal, and how was it set up, and how was it proposed to you?
Well, I was talking to Jerry Jarrett one time. He said, "Oh, I got you booked at this show next Tuesday before Louisville." It was on a Tuesday. We ran Louisville on Tuesday night. So he says, maybe it was on a Wednesday. I forgot now. But he said, "You're going to be in front of an orchestra." And I went, "What?" He said, "Yeah, the guy called me up and he wants you and 2 wrestlers, want you to go, and he wants you guys to have a match while an orchestra plays behind you." I said, "I don't get it." He said, "Well, I don't either, but it pays good." So he had sold the show. He probably sold the show for like $2,000. And all you got to do is take a ring up there. And they said I would get like, what it was, $400, $500, which back in those days, you get a $500 payoff. Hell, that was good. So I said, "What I'm going to have to do?" He said, "Well, you just got to show up early and go out, and they're going to," he said, "I don't know. You'll learn when you get there." So we got to the Louisville Performing Arts Center, downtown Louisville somewhere, walk in, and I meet the conductor, Walter Mays. And I said, "All right." And me and Jeff, walk us through this. He says, "Well, we're going to play to what you guys do and this. Can you kind of give us a hint what you're going to do? Can you work out in the ring?" I said, "No." I said, "We work out every night. We got it down. We don't have to do that." But what he was saying was, "We want you to show us what to do so we'll know what to do." I didn't even put that together. So we went out there, and they had the ring they had put down below the floor of the theater, and they put smoke underneath it. So you see smoke coming out of the floor, and all of a sudden, then you see a ring coming up. And me and Jeff are in the ring. And the people looked at us like, "What the hell is this? This is fine arts?" And because that's what they were going for. Place was full. Place, I don't know, probably 500 people.
Like black tie and everything in the audience?
No, we weren't doing that. And you talk about feeling out of place. Here's an orchestra on this side, percussion, not horns or anything, a piano or anything. Percussion, which is things you beat on. It's like a drum. It's like they even had a jackhammer in it. Mm-hmm. Craziest thing I ever did. So we had this match, and at first the crowd, they sat back and didn't know what to think. And then finally they kind of got into it a little bit after we established that I was not a very nice guy and Jeff was the nicer one. We got them about halfway through it. And at the end, when it ended, boop, 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 bam, and I'm laying there, and then they started up. Perfect timing. And then it was over and we left. And it's still on, I think it's on YouTube.
Yeah, or Daily Motion. It is online somewhere.
Yeah, it's still out there. So fans, if you want to go see it, just it's the Dutch Mantell, Jeff Jarrett percussion match in Louisville, Kentucky. You can still see it.
I've got a few quotes from Jeff. He says the Louis Symphony gig came through a guy by the name of Mark Goulin, not Mark Goulin, who was a manager. He was legitimately a percussionist who performed at symphonies, and he had a concept and presented it to the office, and it kind of went through its way, and me and Dutch get our booking sheet, and my dad called Dutch and said, "Hey, here's this booking, can you do it?" One quick question.
He didn't tell me, "Can you do it?" He said,
You will do
I
it.
got you booked there. You're going to do it regardless.
Do you know any of the other acts that happened that day?
They had a bunch of African guys. You know that long horn they blow? Long.
Like a didgeridoo kind of thing, or
whatever. Dun, dun. Then they have a drummer, and I don't. They just had a bunch of stuff they banged together, like they banged two boards together. I don't know. You'd have to see it. Tell you the truth.
You will have to see it. We'll send a link. I've got a few more quotes for you. You wouldn't think a symphony crowd would respond the way they did, but they gave us a hell of a round of applause, and they oohed and ahed throughout. It's one of my cherished memories that I now have that I didn't appreciate back then. One more quote. They asked us to rehearse the match. Dutch said, hell no. I'll kind of tell you what we're going to do, but we're not rushing. And, of course, the famous bit at the end, the bashing the drum over the musician's head. Who was the musician?
That was Mark Goulin.
Oh, was it?
That was his name. Yeah, that was him.
Oh.
He was a musician. And I didn't know it even had anything to do with him till now. But he was over there on like a bass drum. So we figured out I'd roll out of the ring and I'd reach for the drum. And he'd come down, no, you can't take my drum. This is why the people believed it. Because I wasn't supposed to mess with the symphony at all. So he grabbed it, I grabbed it, we pulled back and forth. I punched him, and then I took the bass drum and busted it over his head. And they went, ooh, that wasn't supposed to happen. Then we got in the ring, we did the finish. And I really liked to finish because as soon as the referee had 1, 2, 3, boom, they went right into music. Almost like they planned it. You know, music is fake. It's rehearsed. They know exactly what they're going to play when they go out there. So
you're saying that was Mark Goulin, the manager?
Yes.
Really?
Well, he was a wrestler.
Yeah.
Too.
But he was also a percussionist as well, and that's how it got.
Well,
through.
he was a musician. I don't know what else he played, but I'm pretty sure that was him. I'll ask Jeff.
I'll tell you what. I'm going to pause this 1 second. We'll get the video up. Okay, that was like pulling teeth, getting that sorted, but I've finally done it. Right, so we're starting at 8 minutes. Where's the drum bit? Here we go. That's the pin.
Yeah, okay, that's what starts before that. I forgot they had the closing credits.
Oh, there's the there's the pneumatic drill.
Yeah.
Here we go. We're trying to find the bit where...
I throw him outside.
It's just videos. God, this video's
there
terrible.
It is right there. I saw it.
I know, this video's terrible, though. Working? There we go.
There it is right there. Now turn it over and it's busted. Look.
And that's Mark Goulin, the manager, wrestler.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's a bit of a fact that I didn't know. DDT for...
Right into the finish. Whoa.
Oh,
and almost I trip over him.
That's not the finish, I don't think.
He just lays there. Whoop. Woo.
Where did you get them furry boots, man? They were sweet boots.
I don't know. I got them somewhere. 1, 2.
You can hear the fans now, like the music stopped.
Here it is right here. He kicks the hands. Boom. 1, 2, 3. Music starts.
Well done. There we go. Oh, hang on. Right, no music's happening there, so I've got a feeling that the audio might be entirely out of whack.
Yeah.
Okay, let's... So wrong. Right, so... I think that's pretty much it. Bashing the drum of the musician's head. Did the TV station pay for you guys, or was it Lawler? No, we've already established it was Jarrett.
For that?
Yeah.
I think the Performing Arts Center paid for it. Or the group.
Not a bad way to earn $400 or $500.
No, not really. Not really. It took all day. I got there at 12 o'clock. I left at 11 o'clock that night.
So you didn't have another booking that night then?
Oh no, I went to the hotel then, and then I think it was on a weekday night. I got to talk to Jeff because facts like that. Usually, I say never let facts get in the way of a good story. Just make some shit up, But I can't remember. But I think that was a weekday night. It was. So
we are going to shut down the podcast now. To be honest, it's actually a bit of a long one, really, because we focus on the symphony. God, 1 hour. I haven't got my glasses. It's over. I can't get my glasses. I can't see it.
I can't.
It's 1 hour something. Anyway, it's 1 hour 20 something, is it? Anyway, we'll work it out. For now, I will shut down the podcast and we'll do it quickly. And thank you very much for watching. We've got books, T-shirts are on the way. Give us 5 stars on iTunes if you enjoyed this. For now, thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you next week. And thank you, Dutch We the People.
See ya. We the people.